Hey guys, so today I'm just going to talk to you about the general care, general maintenance of growing temperate and subtropical / tropical Pinguicula and the ways in which I grow them in my house. Hopefully this gives you some good tips for yourselves. It's important to note that there's two different varieties of Pinguicula that you can get. There's the tropical Pinguicula and the subtropical Pinguicula, which are kind of in the same group, and you also get temperate Pinguicula. Some people call them Butterworts. Some people call them European Butterworts or European Pinguicula or a Mexican Pinguicula, but I find it easier just calling them temperate or tropical or subtropical. It's much easier to understand it like that instead of thinking of, okay, what kind of climate does Mexico have, or what kind of climate does Ireland have, or something like that. So it's important to note that now there's two groups of Pinguicula, as I've said, and I have two groups here. I have the subtropical, tropical Pinguicula and a temperate Pinguicula over here. So this is Pinguicula Moctezumae, Giganteae, Lusitanica, and Grandiflora here. So I put the labels like this, so hopefully you can see it. Might be a bit farther, but the most important thing to note, the difference between the two types of Pinguicula, is that the subtropical or tropical Pinguicula, they do not need a dormancy period. So if you can see this Moctezumae here and this Gigantea here, you can see that they still have the green growing leaves. Unlike this Grandiflora here, you can see that there is a bulb just inside there. So it's important to know the type of Pinguicula that you're going to get before you actually purchase one or before you get one, so you know which type of care that you can give to them. Generally, Pinguicula care for me, it has been very easy. I was always hesitant at first to purchase Pinguicula because I wasn't sure if I was able to provide it the right climate, the right environment, the right temperatures, the right humidity, all these other things which carnivorous plants need, which is very important to their growth and survival. But for me, it's actually been very easy. I mean, these Moctezumae here, I grew all of these from seed. And these Lusitanica here, these are all from seed as well. There's 9 babies here. The mother plants of this Lusitanica here, it flowered, and I thought I need to put it into a different pot because the other pot was all overrun with Utricularia. So, which is ladderworts or small little plants. But it was actually very easy, and seeing as Lusitanica, they are annual plants, you have to collect the seeds and grow them. So it just shows you how easy it is to grow them. In terms of flowering, the plants, I've only really had the Grandiflora flower for me in spring. The Grandiflora flowered for me in spring. And the Lusitanica, as soon as the Lusitanica, because it is an annual, it flowers for me as soon as it becomes an adult. So with the plants such as the Grandiflora, you'll have to cause it to self-seed by pollinating it. But some of them, such as Lusitanica, it self-seeds by itself. So you just cut off the flower, you plant the seeds, and then it's done. You've sowed the seeds and it starts growing, just like these ones here or the Moctezumae. In terms of feeding the plants, known carnivorous plants, they do catch their own food, but it is not important to grow them either. I've never fed the Gigantea, I've never fed the Moctezumae. It's basically impossible for me to feed the Lusitanica because they have such a short growth cycle, and the leaves are also so small that I can't even put food in there. But feeding them is not even necessary. But of course, if you want them to grow better, you can just catch some small midges, mosquitoes, which they like to eat. And the most important thing that they usually eat is fungus gnats. So people who have a problem with fungus gnats in their greenhouses, they usually buy a plant like Gigantea here because they have such big leaves when they're mature that they just collect all the midges and the fungus gnats in the greenhouse to prevent any issues with larvae that do arise from having fungus gnats. Now, the speed of growth between these plants is also determined by them being temperate or tropical. So these ones here, which are the more tropical, subtropical plants, because they have a longer growing season, they do grow much faster. Except for the Grandiflora, because it is a temperate plant, it takes much longer to grow and become pretty big. But even though I say that, I have had this Gigantea here for about 2 years now, and it has only put on about an extra 5 centimeters from what I first got it. And the Moctezumae I've had growing for about 2 years. I grew these from seed and they're quite big. So it also does get determined by the genus of the plants, the if it is a tropical, subtropical, temperate plant. Like these Lusitanica, because they grow to maturity so quickly, they also grow much faster than other plants. So the growth rates of them is all dependent on them, but you'll have to experience these things for yourself. Getting seed for the plants is pretty simple as long as you have two different plants. For example, I can cross the Gigantea here and the Moctezume and produce viable offspring seed from them, and it grows into a really nice big Moctezume looking plant. And that's also dependent on if they're from the same region, you know, and that's where it is important to know if they are Mexican or European Pinguicula. But for the most part, it's easier to just go with temperate or tropical or subtropical. Another cool thing to note about Pinguicula is that you can actually take leaf pullings. So if I were to pull off this leaf here, I could pull off the leaf and place it on top of fresh media like this or sphagnum moss, cover it up a little bit, and the plant will actually reproduce asexually and produce a new plantlet from all of the leaf pullings that you make. So I could take this plant and pull off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 leaves, replant all those little leaves up, and then I'll get 9 new plants off of the 9 leaves from the Gigantea here. It is actually a very successful form of propagating Pinguicula. Many people do it. Personally, I've never tried it because I've never needed to, but in the future I will do it. Just now I'm getting rid of most of my collection because I'm going to be moving, so there's no need for me to actually do any of that propagation, but it's a very good way to increase your size of your collection by doing that. Now, let's talk about the growth care of the Pinguicula. In winter, I tend to give the plants about 1/4 inch of water in their trays. I'd let that water dry up completely and then I'd top it back up to another 1/4 inch. Same for the tropical plants, all of them are tropical, subtropical plants, but the temperate plants, I put in about 1/4 inch of water and I let the water dry out for a day or day and a half to 2 days, and then I top it back up with another 1/4 inch of water. That's just to allow them to stay less moist, as they can easily rot away in this bud form. But I never had that issue before. I thought it was a much more serious and much more difficult issue to overcome than what it actually was. For me, I just put in a quarter inch of water and it was that easy, that simple. So for me, it was very simple to grow these plants. The amount of water that I give them in summer, however, is nearly the same as well. Instead of putting 1/4 inch of water, I put 1/2 inch of water for all of them now. I wouldn't have the 2-day break for the temperate plants, but I would fill them up with 1/2 inch of water, let it dry out, and then top it back up to 1/2 inch. It was literally just that easy for me. I'm not sure if that's just my growing environment or if it's like that for everyone, but for the most part, all the Pinguicula that I've ever owned have been simple to grow. So if you're worried about the amount of water, following that guideline would be very helpful, but make sure you learn about your own climate and any differences that you may have in your growing climate for them. I personally grow all my Pinguicula on my windowsill in my bedroom. They get about 45 minutes to 1 hour of direct morning sunlight, and the rest of the day just bright light because the sun comes over my house and it's just shadow, but it's still pretty bright. And they grow pretty well. I mean, the leaves, they aren't falling to one direction, which indicates that they aren't light deprived or anything like that. So for me, growing them on the windowsill is very easy, and many people actually do this, unless you live in a climate where there's very little light or something. Here in South Africa, we're blessed to have a lot of sunlight, but some places like in Europe do not get so much sunlight in winter. So you might have to look into LED lights or CFL lights. Seeing as I grow my plants inside my house, the temperature range for the plants is almost constant throughout the year. It's an 18 degrees Celsius minimum in summer and a 28 max degrees Celsius in summer. And in winter, it probably gets down to 12 Celsius at night to probably 25 during the day, maybe a little bit less, 20 to 25 during the day in winter. But that range is accomplished just by keeping them indoors. Most people, they have air conditioners, they have thermostats, they have ways in which they regulate the temperature in the house. So this is not even an issue for most people. Along with that, the humidity that I provide to my plants is essentially non-existent. I live in Johannesburg, so we live in a very dry area. The amount of humidity in winter is around 20 to 30% relative humidity, and in summer it's around 50 to 60% relative humidity. But I give no extra care to my Pinguicula for their humidity needs. These plants have been growing in my windowsill just like this ever since I've got them, and I don't worry about humidity at all. I don't even worry about the sunlight. I just water them and then they just do so well, which is really great. Now, the most important thing to note about the Pinguiculas is their substrate. Some people will recommend a peat and silica sand mix. Some will just say silica sand and vermiculite mix. All these mixes work for different people. You must find what works best for you. But for myself personally, I do best with a mix of 1 part peat to 1 part silica to 2 parts vermiculite. In these 2 pots here, I have repotted these plants and planted them from seed in that specific mix. And especially the Mactezume, it has just exploded with growth. The plant used to be really small. The biggest plant was this size here. But ever since I potted them into this pot with the vermiculite mix, the plant has grown, this biggest plant here has grown massively. So ensuring that you have the perfect mix as well really does help the plant more than sunlight or humidity would affect the plant. This plant has been getting the exact same amount of sunlight ever since I first planted them up, but just changing the substrate caused the plant to explode with growth. And obviously feeding the plants on top of that, which I don't do personally, will help the plants grow tremendously. So if you're on the fence about buying yourself a Pinguicula, firstly I would say it depends on which specific Pinguicula you get. I have very easy to grow Pinguicula, Mactezume, Gigantea, Lusitanica, Grandiflora. These are just ones that are very available in my country. It's a very small range in my country, but these are very easy to grow. If you can grow your Pinguicula from seed, it also makes it much easier as they grow up acclimating to your environment. If you're going to grow some very difficult Pinguiculas, ones that I personally never had experience with, they might need more specific care. But if you're getting a very general Pinguicula, then I'd rate that you go straight for it. You buy them, you keep them in a good environment, make sure that you're giving them good light, good water, deionized rainwater, mineral-free water, or distilled water, or reverse osmosis water. There has to be very little to no nutrients in that water, or tap water in some places is fine. In my country, tap water is good, but in some places like New York, for example, the water is very, very hard and will actually damage the plant. So make sure you have the right water as well. And for me, the plants have been very easy to grow. They're very pretty. They're very low maintenance for me. And obviously one of the best parts about the Pinguicula, besides them being carnivorous, is that they have beautiful, beautiful flowers, which is something that many people do enjoy about the plants. A cool fact about them is that hummingbirds actually pollinate the flowers. So guys, thank you for joining me today. That was my talk about Pinguicula and their general care for subtropical and temperate Pinguicula. If you guys would like specific videos on specific Pinguiculas, please let me know and I'll be sure to do that. Thanks guys, goodbye.